With a professional network of outstanding members from Rio Grande Valley to Dallas-Fort Worth to Houston to San Antonio, with plans to continue expansion, the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce of Texas is over 600 members strong. Year-round, the Chamber significantly contributes to the fast-growing, thriving Filipino American community. Conceived during the first trade mission to the Philippines in 2008, and since its official founding in 2009 by Honorary Consul Ethel Reyes Mercado, PAC Texas has led the way in inspiring and bolstering the spirit of entrepreneurship among Filipinos, Filipino Americans, community members, and business partners. We exist to empower new business owners, as well as established entrepreneurs, to become efficient and effective in their business through education, business matching, and networking. We tirelessly support entrepreneurs in their pursuit of excellence. PAC Texas provides leadership and engagement to promote and strengthen Philippine American trade, investments, economic relations, tourism, and cross-cultural activities. The Philippine American Chamber of Commerce of Texas is at the forefront of bridging trade and new business opportunities between the United States and Philippine-based partners. In the last 10 years, through its strategic alliances with development partners, the Chamber's trade investment missions to the Philippines have generated more than $50 million yearly in new businesses for both the delegates and their new partners in the Philippines. PAC Texas connects members to business relations and opportunities while promoting goodwill between the United States and the Philippines. The Philippine American Chamber of Commerce of Texas is committed to enhancing the quality of life of the communities we serve. We know that profits are important, but ultimately, our success is because of and about the people whose lives we affect. PAC Texas members make a difference in people's lives. PAC Texas is the official program implementation partner of the Philippine Consulate General and the Philippine Honorary Consulate of Texas. In a span of a decade, through the consular outreach programs, members have helped more than 40,000 Filipinos in Texas and neighboring states in renewing passports, applying for dual citizenship, and registering for absentee voting privileges. When it comes to giving back, Chamber members are always ready to respond in times of need. In partnership with sister chambers, nonprofit agencies, and community organizations in the United States and the Philippines, we have implemented life-changing initiatives. The PAC Texas-led Operation Save Lives national campaign in the wake of Typhoon Haiyan raised more than $1 million in donations to help affected communities. It is no surprise that of the 160 nominees from more than 3,700 Filipino-American organizations in the United States, the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce of Texas in 2015 would be selected by the National Federation of Filipino-American Associations as the most outstanding Filipino-American organization in the U.S. We proudly celebrate the first remarkable 10 years of the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce of Texas. We aim to continue this legacy with you. Join us. Let's elevate the quality of business and life for Filipinos, Filipino Americans, and for our communities. Here's to another decade of excellence.
Well, welcome. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Laura Tamayo, and I am so happy and pleased to serve as the chair for the Education Committee this year. Welcome to our conversation today. Before we start our conversation, I'd like to invite anyone, if you have any questions about the chamber, please add them to the chat so that we know to contact you and get those questions answered. And now, Rowena, if you will please kindly introduce our guest.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar for 2021. We opened with my favorite video about the chamber. And if you have any questions about the chamber, feel free to put it in the chat, like Laura said, and we'll be in touch with you. For those who are not aware, we are a statewide chamber consisting of 4 regions: Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, Rio Grande Valley, and San Antonio. In fact, we have the chair for San Antonio right here. Hello, Ms. Yoli Moy. Welcome. We also have our founders, Gus Mercado and Honorable Ethel Mercado. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we have the honor of being with our friend, our favorite person in the SBA, Mr. Herbert Austin. Let me read his wonderful bio, and I promise you, you will be impressed. Now, Mr. Austin is District Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration in Texas. Before joining SBA, he worked in the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago. He has such wonderful marketing skills, and it resulted in extensive coverage of products to countries like South, Central America, and the Caribbean. Also, Mr. Herbert Austin is very fluent in French and Spanish. Okay, now currently he is responsible for the management and delivery of SBA programs and services, which includes oversight of resources, SBA centers, and SCORE chapters. The district office works with over 200 participating lenders to provide access to capital to the small business community. The district covers 22% of the land area of Texas. That's almost more than a fifth. 36.3% of the population, and an estimated 800,000 small businesses. Mr. Austin joined SBA in 1989 as Business Development Specialist in Newark, New Jersey. It has been an uphill, his trajectory has been going up and up to Jamaica, New York, Melville, Long Island, and then finally, our pleasure that he's here right now in Dallas-Fort Worth. He has a BS in marketing from New York University and an MBA from Pace University. Now, I have to say, Mr. Herbert Austin, has been our friend and has always been very generous with us for his time. Thank you so much for gracing us tonight, sir.
Thank you so much, Rowena. And you said it's a pleasure and it's an honor. The honor and privilege is mine to be able to serve you. And as you know, when you call, I'm here to serve. So. And I got to do over that bio. It's much too long, but thank you so much anyway for the invitation to join you tonight. Of course, I look forward to your questions. The program has started quite some time ago, and some of you may have already applied for the second draw, but I wanted to talk like a quick 10 minutes and open it to questions and answers. The first thing I wanted to talk about is a grant program for shuttered venues. I'm sure you may have some members who own small theaters or a cinema, places like that, where you have actors doing activities and everything was shut down. So there is a $15 billion grant program, is grant. And one can apply as much as $10 million. And everything is actually available, all the information on the program, except the application is not out yet. So I will make sure that I let the chamber know when the application becomes available. But it's $15 billion that we have to spend on what they call the Shuttered Venue Grant Program. The second thing about the EIDL, as you know, the EIDL program expired in December 31st, 2020. The stimulus package provided some more funding, so the program remains open until December 31st, 2021. So if any one of us, any one of you who had not applied, or you know of someone who missed out on applying first, 2 things can happen. One, you can apply right now, and as you know, the maximum $150,000. And the application is on the SBA website. There is a portal, you go in, you enter your information, you submit it, you get a loan application number, and you wait patiently. And the second thing you can do with the EIDL is that some of us who had applied the first time, you are not allowed to apply the second time. However, you can make a request for an increase. So let's say you were given 75,000, then you suddenly realize you can use some more money. You can actually request an increase of up to 150. There is a process. You have to provide some information to the center, the disaster center that is, so that they can do some analysis and see where they should be giving you more money. The third thing that happened, if you remember when the program first started, if you read the piece of legislation, it was very clear. Every applicant for the EIDL can request a grant, an EIDL advance of up to $10,000. And suddenly the SBA changed the rules. SBA decided it won't be 10,000 per applicant, it would be 10,000 per number of employees. So instead of 10,000 per applicant, if you were a one-person operation and you had a business, you would have received a $1,000 advance, as opposed to what the regulation, the law said, $10,000. But now we have money in the new stimulus package to make good for the difference. So let's say you had received an advance of $1,000, you're actually eligible to receive the difference, which would be $9,000. If you had received $3,000, likewise, you receive the difference. However, there is a process. You have to be, and I'm sure none of you would meet that requirement, you have to be in a low-income area to meet that requirement. That's the first requirement that SBA will be looking at. They have a list of places in our area that are considered low-income, underserved area, and they have the information on all the applicants, so they will be sending their letter asking them, yes, they're eligible to apply. However, they have to provide some information so that, income tax return for 2019 and other information, and they want to make sure they have less than 300 employees. So this is again for low income area only. If there is more money available, they will consider other folks. So, but right now, this is what the EIDL is proceeding. The PPP, as you know, started back in April the 3rd. We had 12, 14 days where we gave out over $346 billion, and we had a lapse in appropriation. We had some more money in about $286 billion, and we made a little bit more loans, but to less people applying. Now the program, in the new stimulus package, the SBA was provided with $284 billion for folks who had not applied the first time, they can apply again, or for people who want to apply a second time, they call it a second draw. Just to be clear, as you look at the application, there is an application for first draw, somebody who had not applied before, and there is an application for a second draw. Under the new PPP, there are a couple of changes. If you are a chamber, you can apply now. If 501c6 can apply, and which is good news. And the second is the company has to have at least 300 or less employees. If you remember, the first time it was 500. The maximum you can apply for is $2 million. If you remember, the first time was $10 million. So those are the major changes in the program right now. And yes, it's moving very slow. It's not moving as quick as the first time around. 284, I think to date, we've only spent $67 billion. So there is a lot of room. As you know, the program expires in March 31st at 11 p.m. our time. And so the members who have not applied again should take action and apply. System is a bit different. SBA has been blamed for making loans to companies that do not exist, to people who use people documentation. So the SBA initially, the plan was to put money quickly in the hands of small businesses. So they would approve it. They told the bank, you got to approve an application in 3 to 5 days, send it to the SBA. In 48 hours, we give you an answer and give money to the small businesses that need it. things have changed a little bit. SBA is a little bit more careful. They have been blamed by the Congress. They have been blamed by the Office of Inspector General. So there is a lot of looking into the application process as you apply. So if there is a delay with your bank, it is because they are looking, they're going back to the first application and asking questions on the second draw application, and it's taking a long time. And so the banks are receiving things like, the loan is on hold with no explanation, or there is an error with no explanation. So the customers are now calling us, and we do have the answers in the office why a loan application would be held, or there is an error. So we have all the answers, so feel free to call. If you put in an application and your bank is saying, we have not given you an answer because the loan is on hold, and the SBA is not telling you why, because the bank doesn't have access to that information, but we do in the office. And what else with the PPP? Yes, the good news is that the chamber can apply now. And those are the major changes. And the other program is the debt relief program. As you remember, there is a part the money that we receive on the first time around allowed us to pay it for companies that had received an SBA loan or a 504 loan. And I think we paid for 6 months, interest and principal and fees for all the businesses that had received an SBA loan. So that's going to continue. So anyone who had applied for an SBA loan on or before September the 27th will be receiving 6 months debt payment, if your loan is current. So that would be principal, interest, and any fees to the lender, 6 months. If the loan was approved on or before March the 27th, you're going to be receiving 3 months payment. Again, principal, interest, and fees. And in some industries, such as restaurants, such as accommodation, you will be receiving another additional 5 months of debt relief. So it's an extensive list of companies that would be eligible for that next 5 months. I do have the list here, but I don't want to read them all. But any companies that has a next code of 71, 72, 66, which is the accommodation and restaurant industries, would be eligible for 3 months plus 5 more months, which would be eight months. So this is basically the major changes I wanted to share. And I just open it, I guess, for questions.
Yeah, do feel free to unmute yourself. If you're more comfortable typing your question in, we're happy to read it out for you.
Since there are no questions yet, let me also add, under the new formulas, if somebody is applying the second time around, if you remember, initially it was payroll, average monthly payroll times 2.5. This is the same except for the accommodation. Any business with a next code of 72 is eligible for average monthly payroll times 3.5. Not 2.5. That's a huge difference.
Okay, and that would be, for example,
restaurant, hotel, motels. As long as the next one is 72, the formula for you would not be monthly payroll times 2.5, but times 3.5. If you remember, when the program first came out, you have 8 weeks to spend the money and then apply for forgiveness. And the second time around, they changed it to 24 weeks, and you had a choice between 8 and 24. This time around is flexible. It's up to you. You can spend the money within 8 weeks up to 20 weeks. So if flexibility, it could be 12 months, 12 weeks, could be 16 weeks. It's entirely up to you before you apply for forgiveness. If you apply for forgiveness a second time, if you apply for PPP the second time, we do hope that you had already put in for forgiveness. That can delay the approval of the loan. You can apply, but they will not make any disbursement of money until you put in your forgiveness funds. SBA wants to make sure that you have spent the money the first time around in order to give you more money. So for those of us who waited, you had 10 months to apply for forgiveness. Some people just decided, well, I don't have the time to do it now. If you are going to apply for a second draw, I would recommend that you still apply, but don't expect any funds until SBA receive the forgiveness documents for the first draw. The application, as you know, for the first draw is still available. If you have not applied yet, is a 2483, can be found on sba.gov/PPP. Or if you apply for a second draw, be careful, it's a separate application. It's a 2483 SD, second draw. That's very important to make the difference, so you know. And yes, that's very much it as change to the program.
Hi, Mr. Austin.
Yes.
Sorry.
Mario, would you like to type in your question at the chat segment, just in case?
Yeah, a very critical thing I didn't cover is that in order for you to be eligible to apply for a second draw, you have to demonstrate that your revenue has decreased from 2 comparable quarters by 25%. That's the eligibility requirement. If you do not meet that requirement, you are not eligible to apply for a second draw. You have to be able to demonstrate that the first quarter of 2019 and compare with first quarter of 2020, that your revenue has decreased by 25%. So that's the first thing the bank will be looking at should you be putting an application. If you don't meet that requirement, you are not eligible to apply. And it's got to be comparable quarter. You cannot take first quarter 2019 and third quarter 2020. It's got to be comparable quarter.
And of course, there's a question.
Austin.
Yes.
Yeah, I just, this is Mario Asilo. I'm an accountant here in Dallas. And I just want to ask, I have several clients whom I currently are working with PPP loan forgiveness. Can you touch base on the deadline, on when will be the cutoff date relative to the deadline application submission of PPP loan forgiveness related to the first draw?
So it's a long time. From the day you receive that check, the bank would have made the disbursement. You have 10 months to put in the application for forgiveness. If the loan is $150,000 or less, the SBA had just come up with a new application for loans of less than $150,000, which is almost like half a page. Very little bit of questions being asked of the applicant. But you have 10 months from the date the loan was disbursed to apply for forgiveness. Keeping in mind that you had a deferment of 6 months. So a lot of small businesses are already receiving statements from their bank asking to repay, to start repaying the debt since they have not yet put in for forgiveness. So my recommendation be, once the money is spent, fully spent, and you have the documentation to support it, Mr. Moore, they should come to you. You're here to assist them. You have the information. You spend 75% on payroll initially and 25% on other costs. Use all 60% on payroll, 40% on other costs. And especially if you want to apply the second time, you really should have already put in your forgiveness application. And the chamber is fortunate to have you, sir, because you can do the hand holding. That is, I'm sure, very critical for some of the chamber members who don't want to have to be analyzing numbers. So I'm sure they will leave it up to you.
Okay, great. But follow up to that, it appears that several banks have different standards and different requirements. Comerica Bank, Chase Bank, Bank of America, appears they have different way of uh, or requirements for submitting or uploading supporting documentations relative to the submission of the loan forgiveness. Is there any standard documentation required that are acceptable for all banks?
There is a standard, less documentation for 150,000 or less. And I don't have a list, a very short list of information that you need to provide. First of all, regardless of the bank, you have to demonstrate with documents that a minimum of 60% or initially it was 75% was spent on payroll. So obviously you have return check from your employees, if you have employees, or for yourself, to demonstrate that yes, 60% was spent on it, and those are my documents. Those are my canceled checks, and whatever you need to demonstrate it. In terms of other costs, such as rent, utility bill, electricity bill, and all kind of other things, for the second draw, they have added a couple of things to it that you can spend the money on. You know, a lot of companies had to buy PPE stuff that are costly for employees. You can now deduct those as well. That can be part of that 40%. And you just have to demonstrate those, because a lot of those banks who are dealing with their customers may already have their financial information. They may already have their tax return for 2019 and even 2020 prepared. So they already have the information that they need. They just need substantiation of how the money was spent, and that's the critical part. And I think this is a requirement for all lending institutions. Now, if Bank of America chose to ask more information, I think it's a little bit on the illegal side, because SBA is very clear what kind of documentation that should be required. I'd be more than happy to send the list to you.
Okay.
And then we did have another question here. It says, being a 501c6, we can apply for can we apply for a grant?
Well, it's, you know, we need to make a difference between a grant and a loan forgiveness. But a grant is outright a grant. So you apply for, yes, you can apply, but it becomes a grant when it's forgiven. So you can actually apply for a loan of up to $2 million, whether you're a chamber, you don't need that much money, to the extent that you can show how the money was spent, which would be 60% on payroll with documentation and 40% on other costs associated in running the business. That is, then, only then can you apply for forgiveness, and you may call it a grant if you want. But there is not a grant at the outset. You're not applying for a grant, there is none. For the shuttered venue, yes, you're applying for a grant. This, you're applying for a loan that can be forgiven.
And then Gus, I believe you had a question as well. You're muted, your mic.
Yeah. Hello,
Hi,
Mr. Austin.
how are you, sir? How are you?
Yeah, I've noticed that you know, there's some differences between the procedure for the first round and the second round, which is what we're doing now. For one thing, the second round is a lot more streamlined. It's been mechanized, which is good. It's efficient if you understand everything. The downside is that there is no more opportunity for your personal banker to intervene, because he has no access to your portal. You're the only one who can you know, access your portal and input all of the documents. There is a Q&A, there's a message center, but you know, it's still difficult. You know, because everything is done online instead of you know, there's nobody coaching you with the second round, but that's okay. It can be managed. It can be manageable. There's some question about how do you calculate the 25% reduction? Is it a hard and fast rule, or if your revenue went down from same quarter of 2019, down to the same quarter of 2014. You mentioned first quarter. It could be any quarter, right?
Yeah, I just mentioned first as an example. It could be you have 4 quarters we're talking about. You can use any 2 quarters where your revenues have gone down by 25%. A lady called me this morning. She said, I cannot do comparable. I got to do first quarter in one, a second quarter in second. You cannot do that. You got to follow the rules as they are written. Yeah. It's got to be.
And Mario is correct. The procedures by different banks are different. You know, the basic policies are the same. The rules are the same, but the procedure for applying is different with the Bank of America or with Chase or with the BBVA. What I do is I apply to both, and then I accept the first one that accepts me. How much time? What is the lapse time between when you submit all of your documentation to the time of approval, Herb?
Yeah, here is the problem, and I mentioned it earlier. SBA made millions of dollars of loans to people who don't own business, people who shouldn't be applying, and as a result, the customer who is applying now is really suffering because SBA, if you put a second draw application, you submit it to the bank, it's submitted to the SBA approved, and the SBA in the past would simply give the bank a loan application number from the SBA. Now, SBA goes back to the first application, trying to figure out whether indeed this business existed. So they are doing their due diligence right now by finding out, did this company actually existed before February the 15th, 2020? We made a loan to them, but they were not supposed to apply. So they go back to the bank and say to the bank, that application that you just put in for second draw is on hold. Well, the bank has no idea what that means because it's not explained why it's on hold. So the bankers now call us. They tell the client to call us, and we are able to give them answers because we know what the hold might be. It could be a number of things. Now you find yourself having to provide, I'll give you an example. Today, a client applied, he's been in operation for quite some time. He had an EIDL loan, he had a PPP loan first time. Applied the second time around, and the bank says, they call it an error. So when we find out what they meant by error, it turns out they were questioning whether the applicant was in operation before February the 15th, 2020, and they're now asking him to provide information on how he registered the business, providing a social security numbers again, providing income tax return for 2019, even for 2020. Many of us have not done up IRS application yet for 2020. So it becomes so cumbersome that SBA is looking at each and every application with open eyes and in the process, delaying the process. And it isn't that the bank knows what's going on. If you call your banker and the banker say, well, I had an error message, but I don't know what that means, call SBA. So it's taking a much longer time than before. But I must also admit that if you remember when the program started in January 11th, only minority group, women, and veterans could have applied with the CDFIs. So from 11th to where we are today, SBA has already approved about 690,000 loans for close to $80 billion. So it's moving slowly. It's a long time from the 11th to the 5th of February to only have done that amount. So some loans are going through, but some they're holding them back to audit them, to review them, and it doesn't matter of how much money. It could be 15,000, they want to take a look at it again.
Could you address a little bit, maybe how someone that is self-employed can apply? Because there are self-employed individuals such as your real estate agents and such that do qualify for PPP, and many of them perhaps didn't go in the first round not realizing this. So could you address that a little bit for us?
Yeah, that was a mistake, not to apply, even if it's going to be a small amount of money. Why not apply? So if you're 1099, you can apply. If you are a self-employed, many loans many loans right now, the numbers that I mentioned, over 619,000, most of them are loans less than 50,000, about 60% of them. So you know that they're going to a person self-employed or a 1099. So if you are a self-employed person, you have contractors working with you and for you, they themselves can also apply. So a 1099 can apply, a chamber can apply, a not-for-profit can apply, and a self-employed person ought to apply. Obviously, the average monthly payroll is not going to be much. It could be $100,000 a year, on their Schedule C, line 31. It could be $100,000 they make in a year, and the average could be less than 9,000 times 2.5. It's a small amount of money, but it's a loan that will be forgiven. Many people were under the impression that because the program it says payroll, you had to have employees. And that's a mistake not to have applied a second time to get free money. You're applying for the EIDL. And what I say to clients who are calling our office, you ought to apply for both, but the use of funds must be different. You can take the PPP and use it strictly for payroll 100%. And take the EIDL, which is a working capital loan, to be repaid, and use it anywhere you wish for any other cost. So that's the answer. Anybody encourage people who are 1099s, people who one-person operation, and most of them we have 30 million small businesses in the United States. Most of them are self-employed person, a huge amount, I hate to say 65% maybe, and there are people who are missed opportunities for a loan that will be forgiven, whether based on the formula, they only receive $20,000, $15,000.
Okay, so then you're saying this is for self-employed people who have a Schedule C, that actually file a Schedule C.
Schedule C, line 31, I think, is the net income. That's the amount that you use in the payroll. When the application says average monthly payroll, that's the number you divide by 12 to have the average times 2.5. And if you happen to have a restaurant that you're very much on your own, it's 3.5. Yeah.
Mr. Austin, I have one more question.
Sure.
All right. So in August, we bought a company, and through our due diligence process, we determined that the company owned by the previous owner has a PPP and also SBA loan that has a 3.75% interest on it, payable 30 years. Then what do you suggest to happen? Because the new owner doesn't want those loans, and he doesn't want to be responsible for it. And we're trying to encourage the previous owner to apply for the forgiveness for the PPP and return the SBA loan because we don't need it. Besides, it was deposited under his signature authority with the bank. So I'm just trying to get your opinion, being the SBA authority, on that one.
So for the EIDL loan, you can send back the money.
Okay.
Yeah, that's easy. And the way you send back the money is actually very easy. When I can remember, Aurora, pay.gov, www.pay.gov. Now, remember, interest started to accumulate, even though you had a 1-year deferment, interest started to accumulate the day of disbursement. So you may not have the exact amount of loan to be repaid. So you may have had a loan, say $100,000, but you got it 4 months ago, and it started to accumulate interest at the 3.75%. You have a deferment of 1 year. Payment doesn't start until a year from now. But now that you want to return the money, you may say, Herb, I don't know exactly how much money I need to pay back. So it's a call to Herb and say, Herb, find out for me how much I have to pay, because he would have accumulated a bit of interest for 4 or 5 months that you carried that debt. So I can tell you exactly to the dollar how much money you want to return. And it's very simple. You go to pay.gov, and that's how you get rid of those funds. Or if you want to send it in person, so that there is an address where you can send it to in our Denver, Colorado office. In the PPP, I mean, it's a forgiveness loan. I hate to believe that you want to return the funds that are grant money. Yeah, so that you want to let it in the business.
Okay. So if the new owner keep the money, he will be responsible paying for it, right?
Oh, that's absolutely. Now, if you buy the business with the understanding that there are some debt to be repaid, because the forgiveness, I mean, we talk about forgiveness, but there are cases where it's not 100% forgiven. If the money wasn't used the way it was supposed to, it could become a debt. It could become a loan that you don't want to carry as a new owner. So the money had to be used properly for what it was intended, because many people are not getting 100% forgiveness. They misuse the fund for things that shouldn't be used. So therefore, they're forgiven one part, and the other part, they have to carry debt for 5 years, but at 1% interest rate.
So I would like to kind of touch on that a little bit. What are some of the mistakes you've seen in terms of misspending the money in your business? Obviously, we're not talking about personal, but how are businesses incorrectly claiming a business expense and therefore?
It's an interesting question. Unfortunately, as you may be aware, we don't get to see applications. All of them go to portal, like everything is quiet, it goes in. We have no idea, how people are using the funds. We have no idea of the amount of their forgiveness loan. So we don't know. But we read in the newspaper all the time, and I cannot comprehend where people, you have to have 500 employees or less. As you know, the Lakers apply, the basketball player. So they got $10 million that they had to return. A lot of companies apply. That's abnormal. They can raise money on the private market. So, but we also read about people who use the funds by buying vehicles. So they needed a beautiful car. They needed to buy, gold or silver. And that's an opportunity for them to use the funds to do that. And of course, a lot of them end up in jail. But the reality is, which is a crazy deal, because I still don't understand it, because of the misuse of funds, they never come for forgiveness because they have no basis for forgiveness. So many of them have spent the money. Now SBA start to send statement, as SBA has already started to send statement to businesses after 6 months deferment. And you wonder, how do they expect to repay this debt? Because they only have 5 years to repay. So you had a loan of $1 million, you started to spend the money. And those are the people who spend the money, not the right way. But now they have to pay. Otherwise, they cannot be forgiven. They cannot demonstrate. They got the loan by lying. So they have 400 employees when they have 1 employee. So they have a lot of money. And I don't understand how they can misuse it, because they have to repay to the federal government. You can never get away with that. So we're reading a lot of those stuff, and of course, SBA is being blamed for making loans to the wrong people also. Because we have many cases where people have fraudulent loans here.
I was thinking a little bit less on the fraudulent side and more of for example, can a business owner, if they see that they're in crisis, they take one of these loans, they're using them to cover business expenses, but then maybe they use them to invest in creating a new product or somehow promoting their business in a completely new way. Is that still considered a valid expense?
So the intent of the program is not for that again. They can never demonstrate that the money was well spent, because you have to provide documentation for the forgiveness, no question, very specific. So if you want to take your business forward, by making new investment. The program was designed for companies that were injured as a result of the pandemic. So to the extent that you're doing so well that you can take the money to invest in other business or opening up another business, and now you cannot demonstrate that the money was well spent, it becomes a loan. So you may say, well, it's not so bad. It's a 1% interest rate for 5 years. I like it that way. But I think it goes deeper than that. I think it goes deeper than that when you go to the bank and you say, well, I didn't know that I could not do that. I don't know whether it's okay, it's a loan, but you have to start repaying it, or it's more than that. You know, you had ill intention when you got that loan, so therefore there's got to be some punishment. So I don't know of any case like that. I know of any case where money is misspent and people got arrested as a result, but I don't know of any case where the money was intentionally misspent to do other things, and when you went for forgiveness, the bank penalizes you.
Yeah, I think
it is during the forgiveness, Laura, during the forgiveness process where you have to really demonstrate with concrete evidence that the money was only spent on a few things. Number one, payroll, and number two, some operational expenses such as lease, and what else, Herb?
No, they have added a couple of things. So it's mortgage interest, lease and other expenses, utility and things that you were unable to pay, other liabilities that you were unable to pay as a result of the pandemic. So you can spend on that. And they have added a couple of things. One of them they have added, which is interesting, is PPE stuff. So you and I know you have a lot of employees, Mr. Mercado, and you have to apply, you have to buy things for them. You have gloves, you have to buy masks, you have to buy a lot of stuff. There is an expense associated with this. You can now use it to do that. A lot of businesses, as a result of people in the streets, they break your doors. They break the door of your business. And that happens a lot of times.
Any funds that are spent on other things, you'll have to return. You'll have to pay back within 5 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the important part here is maybe to understand the word damages or loss. I think these loans, it's the perspective that maybe we want to take on this is, has your business been damaged because of the pandemic? Then it's forgivable. If it's more of you're trying to find new ways to help your business become profitable again, that is not the purpose. So then you can think of it more as a low interest loan.
And I was on a webinar, and an accountant said, my business has never been so good, but I'm going to apply anyway. And a question to me, you asked me, what do you think? I said, it's your conscience. It's your conscience. If you want to apply and get in trouble, because you cannot prove that you are injured, because you're telling me now, and the bank will know that you are doing so well that you never had it so good, but it's free money you're going to apply. So that's, you have to call it, appeal to your conscience whether you can do it. I couldn't do it myself, I told him.
Perhaps in those circumstances, maybe you could tell us a little bit about other resources, because there are resources in the SBA that are not PPP or EIDL. So if you don't qualify for those, there are ways of expanding your business with another type of financial vehicle.
So we have two other programs that have been going on for centuries, I guess. Well, we only started in 1953. We have the 504 loan program I love to talk about. When I joined the SBA 31 years ago, I thought it was the best program SBA ever had, but it never worked out well here. This is the dentist, this is the doctor who just graduated. Instead of renting a place or leasing a place, you want to buy your own place. You even want to buy to remain in your community. You can even buy a piece of land and build on it. And all you pay, your investment is 10 to 15%. And a $1 million deal, you pay 10, 15% down, and SBA and the bank comes with the difference. Right now, the SBA portion, the interest rate for the life of the loan, which is 25 years, is less than 4%. So this is, to me, the best program for people who are in fixed asset and investment only. You can use the program for. So instead of carrying a lease that goes up every 4 or 5 years, buy your own place, for a very small investment on your part, and SBA provide a 40% note for 25 years. Right now, it's less than 4% interest rate. The bank provides a loan of 50% with, they try to match the SBA interest rate, but it's not guaranteed, but they get first lien on the investment. So people who are in many businesses, whether it's agency that they have, whether, you know, they're selling home, think about buying your own. And the beautiful thing of this program is that you can actually rent. It's got to be owner occupied, but you can actually rent a piece of that property to someone as another source of income, so you can repay that debt. That's the 504. And the 7A is a program where you go to your lender, apply for a regular loan, and the bank is unwilling to make the loan on a conventional basis to you. They can use the full faith of the US government and get a loan of up to $5 million. SBA used to guarantee 75% of those loans. Now it's 90%. There is a 90% guarantee. That's another attraction with the 7A. It's a 90% guarantee of up to $5 million on a loan that you have a long term to repay. On an SBA loan, many companies can stand on their feet. They don't need the government to support a loan. However, we extend terms that the bank will not do on their own. So SBA may say 20 years to repay, and the bank on a conventional basis may say, you have to repay that debt in 10 years. Therefore, I have to put an SBA guarantee if you want me to extend it for you. So there are value to those programs. If you're a small business, you're looking for 50,000 or less. I know the Asian typically are looking for 400,000 or more. You know, and that is a fact. You know, but there are some communities where people are, you know, even to take their business to the next level, and they talk about 25, 30,000. That's why we have the CDFIs. We have micro lenders here. If you need a loans of $5,000 or $40,000, you can approach your micro lenders, especially if your credit is not so up to par, you're not bankable yet, but you can get your first loan with the CDFIs. And we have Leaf Fund here in this marketplace. We have People Fund. We have BCL of Texas. You know, they will make small loans to folks who need smaller amount of money.
Wonderful. So then basically, in summary for us, if you've taken out a PPP loan, please make sure that you apply for forgiveness and know you are qualified to ask for a second draw. EIDL, there will not be new applications for EIDL, but if you've been granted one, you can request an increase. And if you would like to expand your business and don't qualify for either, I have put in links in the chat for the 504 program, the 7A program, and of course, continue to explore the SBA for microlending and other options to help us grow. Do we have any more questions? If not, we are coming kind of to a closing. I want to make sure we let everybody out on time, make sure everybody can go to dinner. Do we have any more questions for today? I think we caught them all.
All righty. Well, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Mr. Austin. It's another wonderful.
There is no Mr. in my name.
Herb.
Yeah, that was my father's. I remember his name was a Mr. something, but I'm just simply a friend. I'm Herb. A partner, I'm Herb.
You know, I usually invite Herb and Paulette, his wife, to our events.
Sure.
But he always tells me that there are limitations to what he can attend.
Sure.
But whenever I call him to work and not to be entertained, he's here. He's just a wonderful public servant. And we are so grateful that you help us out, that you're always here for us. And to close, well, let's hope that we can come up with another session with you for other loans, which are so exciting. And we haven't even, I know we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg for what the SBA can give our community. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you so much, Herb, for coming. And we shall see you on our next webinar in about 60 days.
Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for participating. And remember that if you're applying for a second draw and you cannot get an answer from your bank, feel free to give me a call. And Rowena has the number 817-684-5502, or the email address, easy to remember, herbert.austin@sba.gov. And I tell you that a lot of applicants cannot get answers from the bank. The bank is saying, you know, SBA has it on hold, but they cannot tell the customer, the applicant, why there was an error in the application, and they cannot tell the SBA why. They cannot tell the applicant why, but we do have the answers because we can go to the portal and see why and tell the client what other documentation they need to provide to the lender so they can go forward with the application.
Herb, excuse me, Herb. I received a newsletter from your office that you are holding webinars every Wednesday, same time. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yes. So we have, you know, we have a young lady in the office. She took it upon herself to do, I think it's Entrepreneur Week coming up. And she's doing seminars like every Wednesday for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks. But it's been ongoing. You know, many people have not registered like you, Mr. Mercado, to receive SBA information. But we've been, since the program started officially January the 11th, we were doing seminars before that, not necessarily with the chamber, with the 55,000 people who registered to receive SBA application. So we had started early on, and it's still going. So that young lady took it upon herself to organize all kinds of seminars for people who are interested in government contracting, also something we haven't discussed tonight. There are a number of seminars going on as well. Under the 8A program, there is a lot of change. To the Mentor Protégé program, there is a lot of change. To the Women Ownership program, you know, where you could just register yourself. It's no longer the case. So we have a lot in our toolbox for you. So whatever your interest might be, I put you on the right person who manages the various programs for the SBA so you can take your business forward.
Okay, thank you. I am going to post that on our social media page, the information from SBA. Thank you.
Good, good.
Okay, with this, I think we are closing. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Herb. And we shall see you soon.
Next time. Everybody have a safe weekend. Stay safe. Be careful with the coronavirus. It's deadly. It's not. If you manage to get out of the hospital, you're sicker than how you went in. So, you know, get your vaccine. If you're of age like me, because I'm doing my second dose in 3 days before I go overseas.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Enjoy your
Thank
weekend.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Nice weekend.
Mhm. Have a good weekend.